Norman stopped and started several times when he was tasked with the gruesome deed of slicing a man's skin off of a wall that he was fused to. The man who was stuck bled slightly just from the extreme weight of gravity pulling down on his skin. He grabbed Norman's hand and gave him reassurance that he was in the right. Norman put the box cutter to the man's skin and slowly pulled it down. Norman handed him one of the discarded cables to bite down on, even though the grunting was still loud and distressing. Every moment was as horrid as the last, and at no point had Norman grown used to this living vivisection. The pit stirred, and Norman could hear a rumble along with the hum of static. The eerie blue glow of this domed room amongst this living wall of wire-fused people became brighter. Norman hurried. The blood dripped onto his sleeves. When the man dislodged, the woman's shoulders he was standing on felt the weight of two men, and she began to scream as her skin stretched and pulled. Norman had no way to land. Both of his hands held on to the man he freed from the hive mind, and he couldn't find a foothold with just his feet to climb down the two people he used to climb up. He retracted the box cutter and let it drop to the ground. He curled himself as best as he could, knowing he would have to absorb the impact of the fall. He fell. Through sheer luck, he managed not to hurt himself. The man he carried was no longer screaming, and it seemed as if he could move his limbs in some capacity. Norman draped the stranger's arm around his shoulder so that they could limp towards the exit. The blue glow was extremely bright, illuminating the placid faces of people whose sole purpose in life was to pitch. The pit rumbled, and a black cable the size of a tree trunk slammed down in Norman's path. The two men ran the other way in this domed room, hoping to get out the way Norman came. A singular glass-orbed eye the size of a semi-truck peered out of the pit. The digital eye glared at the two with curiosity more than anger, but a curiosity the same as a cat that had a mouse dropped at its feet. Norman could see that there was much more of this thing in the pit, but he was running so hard he did not stop to look back. He could hear the garbled melodies of hundreds of television theme songs smashed into one, which came off as a long humming buzz. They dropped to the ground and slinked into the corner. The cable-like tentacle swiped completely past them because it was too massive to traverse into a small nook. He bounded for the door with the man in tow. They stuck to one another like they were Siamese twins. As he reached the darkened hallway, the black tendril pushed up right behind them. They dodged a tremendous blow, having to decouple from one another temporarily to do it. As they moved upwards towards the hidden door in the mailroom, another door opened in the hallway. Norman only managed a quick glimpse, but the room was filled with cameramen fused to the walls and wrapped in cables. One cameraman detached from the wall. The cables that were present all throughout his body released him, and he hopped from the wall and scuttled Norman and the stranger's way. The cameraman was faster than them both and overtook them in a full sprint. The mechanical Cyclops was without his signature poncho now. It was a mess of oily skin. One of the hands were completely fused to the camera, and some of the veins in its broken neck somehow found themselves fused into the plastic of the machine, which pulsed as if it inherited a heartbeat. The cameraman ran around the two and blocked their exit. He moved from side to side. His body was not physically big enough to completely encompass the hallway, but every time they attempted to step past him, the unblinking mechanical eye hovered in their faces. Norman reared back to punch the thing, but not only did it not attempt to dodge it, it leaned into it. He stopped and decided to keep moving. The cameraman made running jumps at Norman, but he did not react. He was beginning to realize that these things thrived on conflict, so if you gave them nothing, they had nothing. He kept moving forward to the exit. The mutated beast opened its mouth, Not the one attached to its broken human head limply fused onto the plastic, but the one under the camera. What could only be described as a zipper of misshapen teeth from an orifice that had no business to exist, opened. Norman flinched when it lunged at him, but he didn't react. The cameraman did nothing. It could not create the chaos, it could only observe it. He pushed past it, hoping that was the case, and it didn't change its mind. When they pushed into the door in the mailroom, they were clear. They ran for the elevator. As the elevator was in sight, Delphine Osterberg's image suddenly appeared from an empty white wall. "Norman Everman, where are you going?" Norman didn't stop moving with the stranger under his arm. "I'm getting out of here, and with all due respect, Miss Osterberg, I quit." "Well, that is your right if you wish it, but not his," the image of Delphine said, pointing to the man under his arm. "I'm not going back," the stranger said immediately. "I'm sorry, my dear, you signed a contract to produce content for us, so you will produce content for us." "I can't let you do that," Norman intervened. "Oh, is that so?" the old woman said. The elevator door opened with 6 security guards standing inside. "You may go. He must stay." Norman looked to the terrified man with resignation. He wasn't a superhero. There wasn't a world where he could beat 6 guys with batons. The eye of the cameraman was at his back, easing into his personal space for a close-up. Norman pushed the camera away. "Get the f*** away from me!" Norman looked to the man. He wanted to save, but he had to think of his own life and the life of his mother. What could he do? Norman had a thought. "Mrs. Osterberg, might I make a call?" The television image thought for a moment. "Sure, so long as you give me the number and let me dial it," she insisted. "That's fine, even better." Norman gave her the number. The speaker seemed to permeate through the wall. Carlos answered the phone. "Hello, boss." "Hello, this is Delphine Osterberg calling for Norman Everman." "Oh, okay, sure. Hey, man, what's up?" said Carlos. "You still have that Brody Danger thing happening, right?" "Yeah. And technically, I was a pitch man on that idea. I just never signed a contract, right?" Yeah, that's right. Could you tell Mrs. Osterberg how much the project might be hurt if you knew something happened to me?" Yeah. If it was possible to hear someone thinking, it happened right now in real time. Ultimately, Carlos knew he was jammed up. He didn't want to piss off the big boss, but on the other hand, he did consider Norman a friend. "Yeah, I don't think we could do our best work if I was worried about my boy." "So what you're telling me is, if he is doing well, you can guarantee me a hit. Is that what you're saying, my boy?" said Delphine. Yeah, exactly," Carlos said cautiously. "Well, that's all you had to say." The security guard stepped aside and let Norman and the stranger onto the elevator. He didn't know what exactly Carlos had agreed to, but it felt like it mattered. As the elevator doors were about to close, Delphine's projection appeared. "You know, my boy, you signed an N.D.A, so if you speak to anyone about what you saw here..." Norman nodded knowingly. Even if he did tell, who would believe it? Norman exited the building with the stranger, who thanked him profusely, got in a cab, and left Furlong that very moment. Norman never heard from Carlos, but Brody Danger's next movie was a raging success.